Awesome. Cool. I'll just good to go. Awesome. Well, it might be a super tight-knit little crowd today, but yeah, thanks for jumping on, guys. And as I said, recording this as well. And I did get a few late emails just saying that couldn't make it at last minute. So, but in any case, I've done a few of these, and the smaller the group, the more interactive it gets, basically. So feel free, grab your lunch. Don't worry if your screen's on and you're hoeing into your sandwich or anything. It'll be very sort of informal, low-key sort of affair today. But what we're going to do is we're just going to dive straight into it and talk about mapping out a wellbeing calendar. It's probably whether you're from an organization or you might do this for a living and help other people map out wellbeing calendars. It's something that is very topical at the moment, hence the need for this workshop. We've been getting lots and lots of requests for this, so I thought we'd run this one today. But as I touched on, thanks for jumping on. Josh Lambert is my name, and I don't know if any of you have been to any of our masterclasses before, but they're very much like, it's like a chat. I will be going through slides. It's hopefully you don't just sit there and listen to me for 60 minutes, but it is, yeah, fairly chilled out. So jump in at any time, whack some questions in the chat box. I'm using a program called Mentimeter, which I'm not sure if you've used that before. It asks us a few questions and we all get to jump in with our answers as well. So hopefully it just makes it nice and interactive as we get into it. But we'll get cracking. We might get a few latecomers as well. But let us get into it. So what we will cover today is, I'll give a bit of an intro. Hopefully it doesn't sound like too much of a sales spiel at the start, because that's not really what it's all about. But just so you know who I am, and so I don't have too much imposter syndrome and you think that I'm qualified to talk about this stuff, I'll go through a bit of information about what we do for a living and how we help workplaces. We're then going to dive into wellbeing at work, and obviously the real sort of nuts and bolts of today is really mapping out, it's the practical implications of how to map out a 12-month wellbeing program. We have a 5-step framework that we use, and it comes in pretty handy around about this time of year if it's, and I know, and by the way, if you're from New Zealand, which I know a couple of you might be, I think your financial year is slightly different than ours in Australia, but in any case, a lot of organisations base their wellbeing programs on financial year calendars. So you can imagine it's, what are we, mid-June now? We're getting loads and loads of requests with HR staff, or they might be health and wellbeing leaders with budget, going, help me work out what the hell I do with this budget. So that's really the nuts and bolts of what we'll talk about today. Nice little chat box here. Lots of companies are July to June in New Zealand, but vary. Okay, thanks, Philippa. That's awesome. Yeah, it's good to know. I should know that with my wife being a Kiwi, shouldn't I? So cool. And yeah, we'll go through sort of, we'll call it the previous approaches to wellbeing. It's probably more of a look at some of the previous challenges to wellbeing programs, if I'm really honest, and maybe some of the hurdles that we've all faced, some of the things that haven't worked that well with corporate health or wellbeing, because we've been doing this for 12 years and we haven't been great at it for 12 years. We've learned how to do it and how to really engage. So maybe you've had a similar experience as well yourself. So let's press on. So as I said, I won't turn this into too much of a sales pitch, because it's really just to give you background as to what we do. So I'm a director of Pinnacle Health Group. So we're a corporate health company. We're probably best known, I guess, initially, 10, 12 years ago for our corporate wellness centers. And I should point out too, actually, I don't have weird rooms in my house with I think there's a knee model in the background, an anatomical model. I'm actually dialing in from one of our wellness centers at ANZ Bank today. But the context there is we're probably best known 10 years ago for running these on-site wellness centers for companies. So ANZ, Westpac Group and Ernst & Young and so on. This is effectively like a cross between a health clinic and a day spa within the ANZ Bank. That's where I'm dialing in from one of the consulting rooms here. So I'm a physiotherapist by background. That's how we got into corporate health, basically, is running these wellness centers. And fast track to today, we work with over 200 workplaces, not all as big as the banks like that, but from large corporate organizations through to SMEs. And what we're really focused on is inspiring healthy change for workplaces. So this Well Workplaces community that you may have seen, and that's how you found this event, is us just sharing our knowledge from working with those 200 workplaces. And whether you're a health and wellbeing leader, an HR leader, or wherever you may come from and whatever you may do, the whole idea here is that you sort of help that knock-on effect of corporate health and workplace wellbeing. So that's a bit about us. Our purpose is really to create well workplaces. So it obviously seems quite obvious, but we define a well workplace as a workplace that doesn't just inspire healthy change for the people that you kind of have to as a workplace, but also there's that ripple effect or that knock-on effect to the teams, the families, and the communities that your employees interact with. So it's a bit like that pay it forward movement. We spend up to a third of our lives working, and we really believe that a lot of those behaviours to do with wellbeing and our own health are really sort of anchored in the work that we do, or they're really strengthened in our workplace. So we take huge responsibility in that, and hopefully, if you're a health and wellbeing leader at a workplace, you have a similar mindset as well. And again, just to round out this, what we really do at Pinnacle Health Group, we do two things. We work on employee wellbeing strategy. So you'd sort of say that what we're talking about today is the strategy behind mapping out wellbeing. We also run our own employee wellbeing programs. So, we run quarterly wellbeing programs, we run annual wellbeing programs, we do lots of health checks and skin cancer checks and some of the higher volume services there. And as I touched on, we run on-site wellness centres. But for obvious reasons, it's not appropriate for every single workplace to have their own on-site wellness centre. They might be remote, they might have 5 employees, but certainly that's just another thing that we offer as well. So again, we've been doing this for 12 years, 200 plus workplaces that we work with. We've worked with some organisations that we've really seen so much change in the way they've communicated and really championed wellbeing. So it's been quite an interesting ride over 12 years. So rightio, that's enough about me, and I want to hear from you guys now straight away. So if you haven't used Mentimeter before, it's fairly simple. If you can see up the top of this slide here, if you open up another tab if you're on your computer, or you can get out your phone and do it as well. But if you go to menti.com or www.menti.com, it'll ask you to type in a code. So our code is 47385025. And I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear, what would you most like to take out of today's session, or what are you here for? What have you jumped on this session for today? Again, there's only 4 or 5 of us on here, so this is quite cool. We can cut to the chase and effectively have a chat with each other about how to help each other moving forward. And I say how to help each other just because I'm the one with the microphone right now doesn't mean I'll have all the answers, and I want to really get some insights from you as well. So jump to menti.com. It'll ask you to type in up to 3 responses to this, but you might like to just jot down what you're most looking to get out of today's session. And we should, as you guys start filling those out, we should start seeing some responses come up there in the form of a little cloud, hopefully. Here we go. Australian lens, I like that. There you go. Does it have like the corks bobbling up in front of the lens, like the Kubra hat? Is that the... Sorry, that's a terrible gag, but yeah, no, definitely that'd be good, Philippa. We'll talk through that, and I assume that was from you anyway, Philippa. I'm just gonna, go straight in there. And different approaches, definitely. I can speak fairly specifically without sort of dropping in company names about different approaches and how they work. Probably more about the size of the organisation or the nature of the organisation, so the industry that they work in. Ideas, yep, definitely. Oh, hi, Silvio. How you going? Nice to see you. Thanks for jumping on.
I'm FK303349.
Yeah, it's your unique code word, is it, mate? I like that. Thank you.
I don't know what that is, but anyway, nice to see you.
Good to see you, and thanks for jumping on, mate. Inspiration. Well, hopefully, geez, the pressure's on now. But yeah, I guess to come back to what we do as an organisation, the whole idea of it is to inspire healthy change. It's one thing. Hopefully, after today, you guys might have an idea of how to map out a 12-month wellbeing program or a financial year wellbeing calendar. But it's another thing to really get employees on board or get your people on board. And that's, I'm going to spend a fair bit of the session talking about that actually. One of our 5 steps actually is all around awareness and championing that. So thanks, guys. I'll give you a little bit more time just to plug in your responses there, but that's great. So that gives me an idea. It's probably fairly obvious why you jumped on, but that is really cool. Let's keep moving on because there's a few chances like this where you get to whack in your answers. And as I said, I'm recording this and I can share the recording with you after the session. Okay, now I won't spend too long on this because the assumed knowledge, if you like, if you're along at this session, is that you probably are aware of wellbeing. You're probably aware of why wellbeing in the workplace is important. But just so I'm not starting at the finish line and then sprinting through it, wellbeing really we define, or we've learnt to define as the state of being comfortable, healthy, and happy. As I said, my background is probably more so in the physical wellbeing side of things, being a physiotherapist. But certainly over our 12-year journey, that going from that biomedical model of health, which was very much, if there's an injury or there's a sickness, there's either a medicine or a treatment for it. We're now looking at wellbeing so much more than that. It's, the mental and the physical and the social interaction is huge. And I'm sure if you're on this call and you've dabbled or you've had a go at wellbeing before at your organization, or you might be more advanced at that and you've had structured wellbeing programs, you've probably and hopefully incorporated not just physical well-being and the absence of sickness and illness, but you've looked at mental well-being and social well-being pillars as well. I'll move on to the next one, but interestingly enough, those of you that might be familiar with the Gallup Institute or the Gallup Pillars of Wellbeing, they define there's 5 distinct wellbeing pillars, and they actually start with, or the most important wellbeing pillar they remark is career wellbeing, or what we call as work wellbeing. And they go as far to say basically that in the absence of optimal or good career wellbeing, it's impossible to have good physical well-being, good mental well-being, good financial well-being, good social well-being, etc. And it comes back to that point, right, that I was discussing before, that if we're spending 1/3 of our lives working, really the thing that we get up for most days, or 5 days a week, or however often we work, has the single biggest impact on our overall well-being. So working in workplace well-being, probably a little bit more biased towards work well-being, but certainly I've seen it, and I'm sure we all have our own experiences with this, but I've had instances before where my work well-being was not optimal, where I wasn't really happy in the work I was doing, and that had significant effects on my mental, physical, and social well-being. If we flip that, and that's what we're going to talk a lot about today, if we're not looking after our mental, social, and physical well-being, it's really hard to have great work well-being. It's hard to show up and be really productive and passionate about what we do. And another way of really showing this in a really simple illustration is to say that good work is great for your well-being, and good well-being is great for your work. And really, if we're nurturing that relationship, we've got to make sure that we're doing something that really lifts us up. It might not be the, in 110% loving it every minute of it every day, but doing stuff that we feel that we're passionate about and there's purpose to it, and vice versa, looking after our well-being so we've got the energy and we've got those mental reserves to be putting our efforts into work. So again, I said I wouldn't spend too much time on this, but I think it's really important just to set the tone and give that background there. To take that a step further, when we look at work wellbeing, there's really 2 parts to it, or there's 2 significant stakeholders in this relationship. We spoke before around the knock-on effects to the community and our families, and setting behaviours and setting examples. But really, if you break down the workplace, there's employees and there's employers. And good work wellbeing for employees obviously gives purpose, provides the option to get fulfillment. For those of you that might know the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, really the peak of the pyramid in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization or fulfillment. So what we get up for every morning is, obviously drives that quite a lot. Social interaction, we're seeing this quite a lot with hybrid working at the moment, but the workplace often provides this opportunity to connect. And you through lockdowns, I know if you're in Australia at the moment, you're dialing in. If you're in New Zealand, which some of you are, some of the most locked down parts of the world throughout COVID, and that human interaction that we took for granted in the workplace was obviously removed. So a big onus on the workplace to provide that for employees. For employers, it's all about culture. It's all about providing that community, and it's hard to attract, retain the best talent if well-being, culture, high performance culture, growth mindset, those sort of factors are a big part of the culture. You're going to lose the best talent. And we're seeing a lot of it at the moment with this sort of great resignation or great calibration of what we're wanting to do. So again, setting the scene quite a lot here. I know this is probably your absolute bread and butter if you're in HR or if you're in wellbeing, but I guess it's nice to take a step back and just look at how those factors play a part before just diving in to go, what should we do in July for our wellbeing program, I guess. Okay, next bit of interaction for you guys. And by the way, it doesn't have to be just these questions that you're answering to interact. Please jump in the chat box, interrupt me at any time. I love to talk, as you can probably sense already. But I'd love to hear from you. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've found in mapping out an employee wellbeing calendar in the past? So if that's been your responsibility, or if you're new to it, but you're already finding challenges, what hurdles have you come across? What have been some barriers to kind of mapping out a wellbeing calendar that engages your staff, or have you found it hard just to get going in the first instance, or not knowing where to start? We'd love to hear from you here. So whack down some of your responses there if you can. That'd be great. As I mentioned before, this is being recorded, and I'll be able to share with you not just the recording, but it'll have all the different responses here. And you might even like to use Mentimeter if you like. It's a handy little tool if you're running some toolkits between, might be stand-up chats within your team, just to get a quick pulse check on how everyone's going. It's really cool just to ask questions like this. So yeah, feel free to jump on Mentimeter as well. Well, have no affiliation with Mentimeter, by the way. I just thought I'd fill in the silence. Cool. We'll just wait for a couple of responses there. Impactful topics. Yep, that's a really good one. So many choices. Yep. Competing initiatives. Absolutely. It can be competing initiatives. It can even be competing sort of stakeholders as well. We find a lot where it might be the HR team are owning this part of it, or there might be a health safety team, and there's now this new wellbeing committee that's been formed. And yeah, it's a fast moving field if you're in it. And certainly we're seeing a fair bit of that as well. You might also have, one thing we find a lot of is, and I'll talk to this in a moment, is there's lots of stuff already happening at an organization. If you think of it, there might be employee benefits teams, there might be a staff club, there might be stuff that falls into rewards for your employees and so on. Budget, I'm glad someone brought up budget, given that this is a financial wellbeing calendar chat. But yeah, that's obviously one of the biggest ones. We've seen quite a lot after the crazy world of the last 2 years. It went from wellbeing gradually being, pushing up to sort of the C level or the leadership teams within some really progressive organizations, to then being literally one of the only things on the agenda through COVID for some organizations, which was, dare I say it, one of the silver linings of COVID. But then towards, say, mid-2021, late 2021, we almost got a little bit of wellbeing fatigue, if I'm really honest. We saw some workplaces just being, stop bombarding me and telling me how to be well or how to be healthy. We got death by webinar. I shouldn't say that while I'm presenting a webinar here at the moment, but there are a lot of people just saying, you know what, I'm a bit sick of these topics and, impactful topics and those sorts of things as well. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing there, guys. So yeah, I love that one there as well, which I haven't touched on, avoiding token wellbeing. absolutely love that. I won't say we get called out on this a lot, but we get, the people that really, it's quite a good thing, but challenge well-being. They kind of go, well, is this just ticking boxes? Is this just the, the fruit bowls and yoga type throwaway line? That is this, are you throwing this in to make us feel like we get well-being, but really you're just going to keep working as hard? And do you really care about well-being, or do you have to do this? So yeah, love that, guys. And I think that the best thing to do now is sort of to get into some of the content, because we'll probably uncover pretty much most of those challenges and look at ways to really go about minimizing these challenges, I guess. But yeah, thank you for contributing to that. That's awesome. Let's move on. So yeah, I guess just to summarize, and for that context as well, the 200 plus workplaces that we work with, some of them might have 30,000 employees, like ANZ Bank. Some of them might have 10, 15, 20 employees, but realistically, you might assume that the bigger organizations have bigger budgets. They've got these amazingly sophisticated wellbeing programs with, teams of wellbeing champions and everything, this self-serving data points that they can, analyze at any point in time. If you assume that, you would be mistaken. And that's not, I'm not saying that in detriment to any of our big clients, by the way. That's just saying that it's exactly the same thing, just with more people. We're seeing some more sophistication develop through technology and so on. But at the end of the day, whether you're 10 employees as an organization, 10,000, whatever it might be, 100,000, the same principles apply and the same barriers or the same challenges are there. Someone mentioned tokenistic before. So yeah, that's been one of the challenges of traditional employee wellbeing, the kind of fruit bowl and yoga, mentality that we mentioned. Reactive would be another one. We get an influx of inquiries around, are you okay day, or are you okay week, or it's Men's Health Week at the moment, or next, it's next week, isn't it, I think, or this week. Again, our inquiry forms and our website goes absolutely ballistic, because a lot of people go, quick, I've got to do something for Men's Health Week or Women's Health Week, or it's NAIDOC week coming up, or whatever it might be. So being reactive, and again, it's no critique. A lot of the stakeholders we work with, employee wellbeing or health and wellbeing is not the only responsibility. You're looking after so many more things. But if it's sounding familiar, that kind of, oh my goodness, it's now this week, or it's this day and I haven't done anything, if that's sounding familiar, don't worry, you are not on your own. So the other critique, I guess, of traditional employee wellbeing, it's been heavily kind of swayed towards the on-site employees, and a little bit biased towards easy delivery for big offices or bigger employee hubs. Certainly we're seeing return to office happening at the moment. Some of our bigger clients are kind of that hybrid working mentality of 2 to 3 days a week in the office. But certainly we need employee wellbeing programs to be accessible anywhere, if they're going to be truly scalable and truly equal access for everyone. So bear that in mind. I'm going to touch on ways that you can really scale that and look to that in a moment. But again, it's probably just a critique of maybe how traditional employee wellbeing has evolved. It's been all for the corporate office, but not for the branch or for the factory or all that sort of thing. Generic as well, so off-the-shelf programs and not really tailored to the type of industry, or tailored even more so to the health of your staff. If you're an organization that might gather health information, you might deliver health checks, for example, you get some really rich data on the overall well-being of your staff. And then if you're, we see it a lot, if you're getting that information, but then you're just rolling out, okay, we're just going to tick the box of mental health, tick the box of nutrition, do a financial wellbeing workshop, we're done for the year. It's not really tailoring the wellbeing program to what your staff are telling you, or to what the health areas are telling you as well. Poor engagement. I'm sure we've probably all had that, where we've worked so hard on a campaign or a program only for, not that high engagement or not that many people to come along. Costly. So yeah, it kind of links to engagement. You can spend, a lot of money on wellbeing programs with all the bells and whistles, but if it's poorly engaged, if it's reactive, if it is tokenistic, it's not really going to get the ROI that you or your team are really looking for. Excuse me, guys. No help, and I put an exclamation mark there, but again, if this is sounding familiar, but just doing it all on your own and going, geez, I wish I had some champions within my team that could really get the message out there. I feel like I'm doing this on my own. I'd love someone to help me get the word out, increase awareness, that sort of thing. We see it all the time. It's a huge one as well. And yeah, I've probably touched on these other ones as well, but that scattergun kind of flying by the seat of your pants, like, yeah, let's just sprinkle a bit of this type of well-being. Excuse me, guys, sorry about this. Oh dear, got a tickle in my throat. I told you I talk too much, so that should slow me down a little bit. But that kind of scattergun, ad hoc, reactive approach to well-being, it might kind of get some things in place and at least get you from nothing to something, but it's not sustainable, as you may have experienced yourself. Okay, so that's me kind of talking to a lot of the pain points. Now we're going to touch on really what we've come up with over that 12-year period. And this isn't by any means a definitive, you must do this, otherwise you've failed as a HR stakeholder, or you don't have a wellbeing program. But we've designed a framework. Effectively, it's a 5-step framework to designing a structured wellbeing program. The idea, it's not specific in the fact that it doesn't say you have to have a guest speaker come in and talk about this, or you must do flu vaccinations, or you have to do this. What it's providing you with is a framework to really look at what you've currently got, if you've got anything, set up a structure, make sure you're incorporating factors that will engage and will be sustainable and scalable. And like I said before, that no help exclamation mark, how to do it and actually engage others to help you. Because again, I'm making the assumption, just by knowing lots of people that do this for their job, it's not your only job is running it'd be great if it was, but you've probably got lots of other responsibilities other than mapping out 12 months of wellbeing initiatives. So let's get to that now. What I might even do, actually, I said I'm quite bad at multitasking, but I just wanted to very quickly, sorry, this is, where was I? Here. I'm just going to share in my, I need to copy that one. I'll share in the chat box. We have a little scorecard, and it's quite handy. You don't have to do it as I'm talking, but at some stage, if you can see that there in the chat box, we have a scorecard. It's like taking a test or taking a quiz. And effectively what it will help you with is it will help map out for you, if you've already got a wellbeing program, or if you haven't started but you don't know where to start, it'll just kind of rank you at the moment as to how you go on these 5 steps, or how you rank in these 5 different pillars of wellbeing. So I've just shared that in the chat box now. Feel free to jump into it. Yes, I thought I'd do that now rather than sort of cram it all in the end. Cool. So we speak to 5 specific parts of that. The first one is structure. Makes, it's probably self-explanatory, but I'll get into that and we'll share some examples of not just, you've got to have structure, but how to structure it and how to do that in a fairly simplified way. The second one is psychological support. We touched on mental wellbeing being a huge pillar. We also touched on the fact that, by the end of 2021, a lot of people were probably sick of us saying, hey, look after your mental health. So there's ways to do psychological support. There's ways not to do it as well. So we'll talk through that. Awareness. So there's no point going to all this effort if no one knows about it, if no one's engaging in the content or engaging in the initiatives. Champions. So basically building a team or building others that are going to grow that network and really get the message out. And evaluation. So that whole thing about what you can measure, you can manage. If you're not really getting any data at all from your staff, even if it's as simple as a staff satisfaction survey or even a wellbeing survey at your workplace, any information really needs to come in. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Any information that you can get allows you to measure the intervention, or measure what you're providing and then tweak it and tailor it that way. Okay, so that's the SPACE framework as a snapshot. I'm just very quickly going to grab another drink of water because I'm losing my voice, sadly. 2 seconds. Okay, thanks, guys. Hopefully I don't get too gravelly by the end of it. I don't know what's going on. Cool. So, and obviously the 5 different pillars, SPACE, nice, easy mnemonics to remember is space. So that's the methodology we teach. That's the methodology that our workplace wellness consultants teach. And when they have organizations come in and inquire, one of our first steps will be to actually send them the link to the scorecard, which I've shared in the chat box there. And that it's like a quick self-test to go, yeah, cool. I tell you what, our structure is terrible. I've only ranked at 20% for structure. Or psychological support, we've done pretty well. There's just a series of 10 questions for each. And yeah, you guys get the drift anyway. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to each of those 5 steps. And I also want to hear from you guys here, and I want you to interrupt me at any time. If any of it's a bit generic, let's dive into examples, because again, that's what I do for a living, and I'm happy to share, all the nuts and bolts of that. So let's get into it. Okay, so structure. The best way to really show structure, I suppose, is to give an example. Now, okay, so we're June at the moment. Apart from, I'll talk of Australian clients, I guess, just to make it really simple, but we also work with New Zealand clients as well. But Australian clients, it'd be about half and half. That a lot like an annual wellbeing calendar based on a calendar year, some like a financial wellbeing calendar, just because it ties into the times where they get budget and the times where they go, cool, I've been allocated X amount. Now I can go to market and I can map out either 4 quarterly pillars of wellbeing, or we can tie this into our values. We've already got our pillars. Now I know what my budget is for the year. I can start to implement those. So just to give you a really stripped back example of what an annual wellbeing calendar might look like. Again, this is no one organization that we work with. They might decide through our consultants chatting with them and going through this process, or they might already predetermine this, that they're going to map out 4 quarterly wellbeing pillars. Our suggestion is at least having quarterly structure. 12 like monthly wellbeing themes or monthly wellbeing initiatives can sometimes get a bit too much, particularly if you haven't been strong in wellbeing before. It just gets way too much. Like you'll be chasing your tail, and you kind of, it's Men's Health Week at the moment. You're probably thinking, oh my goodness, this is an Australian one, but NAIDOC week in a couple of weeks. Oh my goodness, what am I doing for Are You OK Day? Sometimes doing too much and mapping out monthly themes can just be a bit hectic. So certainly if you're new to this, or even if you're not, and you're just wanting to make life a bit easier for you, we often suggest mapping out quarterly wellbeing themes or pillars rather than monthly, at least to start with. So probably nothing groundbreaking there, and probably makes perfect sense. But just as you can visualize there, this example has mapped it out into 4 pillars. Very simply, healthy eating, so a nutrition pillar; healthy sleep, so this workplace hopefully identified that sleep health was a risk factor, or something that not many of their staff were getting good enough sleep. Interestingly enough, the health checks that we run, there's 2 or 3 questions on sleep health as a kind of a triage into health coaching with sleep experts, or workshops delivered on sleep, or a sleep challenge. The 3rd pillar for this particular fictional organization was healthy movement. And they also decided that in the healthy movement pillar, they decided to do a September challenge. So a step challenge in the month of September, in order just to get a bit of banter going between colleagues, to get them up and about, competing against each other, all that sort of thing there. And they also added in a workshop and some classes there to really round out that pillar. And finally, their 4th quarterly pillar for the year was about healthy minds. You'll notice it's not called like psychology or mental health or resilience or anything like that. It's around healthy minds. So it could be really proactive mental well-being. There was a meditation challenge for the month, which was daily mindfulness or meditation activities that they could track and then look back over the month and go, great, for 30 days in a row, I did a 5-minute mindfulness activity in the morning, and I feel like I've now ingrained that as a behavior that I can do moving forward, so on and so forth. So no doubt you guys have probably either done some of these things, either those dot points, you've probably engaged in those initiatives, or you may have even had a structured calendar that's had pillars similar to this. Nothing groundbreaking, but the real sort of pain points with this is, I touched on one earlier, which is doing too much. So doing 12 themes straight off the bat, it's too much. The other pain point is doing it all to do with physical well-being, or really putting all of your eggs in mental well-being and not having stuff that rounds out those physical, social, and mental well-being barriers. The reason I say that is you can really polarize employees if you're too heavy-handed in one particular well-being pillar. You think of your organization, think of organizations you may have worked with, that you might have people that, you know, the real classic, I don't like to stereotype, but they might be really stoic. They're like, oh, I'm not doing that mindfulness sort of, you know, fluffy hippie stuff. I'm not going to do yoga or all that. That's just not for me. And that might be their first kind of, you know, interaction with well-being. And you can really, I guess, get people offside if that's all you're really pushing. I shouldn't say pushing, if that's all you're offering. However, that they might be more engaged in something to do with the step challenge, or they might really resonate when your comms have gone out around, are you struggling with your sleep at night? They might be a new parent. They might be someone that just doesn't sleep that well. You know, come along to our workshop next Thursday on the 5 tips to setting up your environment at home to engage in a better sleep, so on and so forth. So the entry point into the 12-month wellbeing program is going to be very different to different types of employees. So it's really important that you have, don't like to say you have something for everyone, because you can't, but you certainly are representing different pillars of wellbeing. So I guess, you know, I'm probably repeating myself a little bit here, but if you're the leader at the organization at the moment, if you already have some pillars, if you already have a bit of a framework, good on you, well done for getting that going. Have a think about how you can put the meat on the bones there. So how can you turn your framework, so turn your, let's say you've got financial wellbeing as a pillar, how do you turn that into something that's interactive? So how do you get in someone to deliver a workshop? Do you set up a financial wellbeing challenge? So on and so forth. So anyway, that's the structure. And with lack of structure comes that scattergun ad hoc randomness that we spoke about before. All right, I've probably made my point there, but please jump in if you've got any questions on structure. Might be questions, they might be experiences with structure, or good tips that you want to share with your fellow colleagues as well here. But feel free, you can either jump in, you can whack it in the chat box, anything you like there. I will keep moving on. I'll let you type in any feedback in your chat box. Cool. All right. So this is a point in time now. We've spoken about structure. That's right. I was actually going to do this before that last slide, but we've spoken about structure and introduced that. Many organizations already do some things. So there's kind of already maybe an underlying structure. You may not have probably formalized that structure. So, but what I'm going to ask you now, if you're, it doesn't matter if you're not the HR leader at the workplace, or but have a think, what are 3 wellbeing initiatives? They might be a keynote presentation, they might be flu vaccinations, might be EAP, but what are 3 things that your workplace already delivers? So have a think about it, or the workplaces that you work with. What are the 3 most common initiatives that you see workplaces work with, or workplaces deliver? I'm interested to see this, actually. It's be a nice little snapshot. Health insurance, yeah, that's a good one, actually. EAP, absolutely. EAP is almost getting to one of those things. It's a bit like you've got to have it. It's obligatory. It's kind of like the insurance line in a lot of ways, that you have to have it there as a safety mechanism, and it's super important. We're going to talk about psychological support in a moment, but yeah, obviously that's very well represented here. Health insurance, that's an interesting one, and I like that you pointed it out, because previously, you go back particularly in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, health insurance was sort of seen as the corporate health program. It was kind of like, well, cool, sign up to be a health insurance partner. We'll do some workshops for you, or we'll give you some discounted rates. But really what we want is your your audience or is your corporate employees, so we can sell them health insurance. So and I mean that in that's not a talking down about health insurers at all. There's some really good programs that link health insurance to corporate health, and also preload health insurance to kind of prevent hospitalization, prevent allied health spend, etc. But it is a really frequent one. So it's important that what I like about this is we do this with a lot of our, well, basically all of our organizations when we first onboard them. We do an audit of what's already in place. And I like the fact that you guys have drawn attention to health insurance, because if you have a relationship with a health insurer, there's usually perks involved in that. But it's often just put to the side, or it's just a dot point of an employee benefit. It can actually be really well integrated into your health and wellbeing program. I'll give you an example that, and here I am at ANZ. Each quarter, these guys have what they call a wellbeing marketplace, and they get their health insurers. So they have a panel of health insurers, but they get those health insurers in offering different things. They might be offering quick consultations, or they might be really there just to offer, health insurance. But it is an employee perk, it is an employee benefit, and you can build it into that structure that I've shown before. So it's kind of like really sweating the asset that's already there, or really making it a bit more tangible, not just a couple of lines at the bottom of an email. It's like, we've got this program, you get perks with that. Fruit, absolutely. Wellbeing checks, yeah, that's probably, it's not probably, it's the highest volume of service that we offer is health checks. Mental health and EAP, we're going to touch on that in a second. Flu vax are a fairly standardized one, and that's probably going to increase even more now that in Victoria, New South Wales, in Australia, they've made it effectively free. So it's effectively free to get workplace vaccinations. Yoga and mindfulness, yes, absolutely. Leave, I like that someone's put in mental health leave. A lot of the policies that we have, whether that's wellbeing, at Pinnacle Health Group, we have our own wellbeing leave. You might have, we're seeing, lots and lots more of this 4-day working week or different policies. That is a tangible part of your wellbeing program. So the more you can kind of uncover these things and really bring them to the surface, brand it as well. So one thing with the structural part of it, I'll touch on that in the awareness pillar as well, is that workplace wellbeing programs do so much better if they've got a tangible name. So instead of just saying, hey guys, it's Men's Health Week next week, at the start of the year or at the start of the financial year, you can go, cool, our wellbeing program is mapped out. Here's the 4 quarterly, this is what we're going to work on. And our wellbeing program is called Thrive, or it's called Rise, or it's called Engage. It doesn't have to have a somewhat cheesy line like that or cheesy sub-brand. It might just be called Insert Company Wellbeing Program. But by doing that, you're giving it a persona. You're cutting out all the noise, because employees get lots of information. So if it's just, oh my God, what's this email about? Oh, it's about flu vaccinations now. Or, oh, it's about health insurance. If you categorize it all, you bundle all this into your tangible wellbeing program, it just makes that message so much simpler for your staff. So anyway, I am going on a bit about it, but thank you for sharing those ones there. They are the super common ones. And if we go back a slide, I was meant to do that before that slide, you could really have a think about, all right, well, oops. Oh, here they are. Sorry. With the healthy minds, well, EAP would really fit into that pillar. So would mental health leave. So would the mental health pillar. We spoke about flu vaccinations. That might fit into sort of the physical wellbeing side of things. You can kind of, slot these different standalone initiatives into the pillars that you've created. You can draw a pretty long bow when you get to it. So anyway, thank you for doing that. It's nice to see that. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time on that first pillar. I better get my skates on now, but that was the S of the SPACE framework. That was the first step. Psychological support. So we touched on EAP, or an employee assistance program, before. As we've said, it's almost I shouldn't say almost, it is a must-have at your organization. Having employees getting access to on-demand or live, bookings to speak to someone, whether that's critical incident support. So whether that's an employee going through a really tough time and needs to speak to someone about critical incidents, or whether that's front-end preventative counseling, either way, having that psychological support is super important. The biggest bugbear of most organizations that we work with when it comes to EAP is lack of engagement. There's many factors around that. I'm sure you've probably seen this and witnessed it yourself, but stigma still, unfortunately, there's still people that don't necessarily want to go along or to call the hotline through their workplace to speak to a psychologist. There's still stigma that, you know, there's nothing wrong with them. I don't need to do this. What are you saying? I've lost my marbles or something like that. There's that mentality, and that can result in lower engagement. There's also sometimes poor awareness around this as well. And what we find, if I'm going to cut to the chase really here, is that psychological support is a must-have. Where it's poorly done is when EAP is just a tagline or a signature in the bottom of an email, and it's not really engaged with, or it's not brought to life. So if we go back to that structural example that I spoke of before, you know, really, if we're saying, cool, we've got a healthy eating challenge coming up, a healthy eating workshop, there's nothing saying that you can't, at the start of the comms going out for the healthy eating challenge, or at the end of the dietitian delivering that healthy eating workshop, there's nothing stopping you from going, by the way, you know, nutrition is really closely linked to mental health. Don't forget, we've got an EAP program. You know, there's some amazing counselors out there that can talk to you about how you're going. They might even be able to refer you to people that are experts in what you've learned today, which is nutrition. So that's a really weird specific example. But the point I'm really making here is that just having a hotline or having an EAP program doesn't really work unless you're bringing it to life and referring to it, and almost trying to normalize it in a lot of ways. You know, a really kind of, I think it's a silly analogy, but sometimes it's like, I've got 2 young kids, and I just saw before that in my taskbar here, you can see the shows I've been watching, but we've got the Gruffalo's Child, which is a kid show here. But basically that the analogy we often use is to hide, with kids, to get them to eat vegetables, you often hide them mixed in with something else. Sorry, I'm butchering my words here, but basically sometimes you have to do the same with wellbeing initiatives. You have to talk about mental health or talk about the EAPs if it's not psychology or it's not mental health. It's to do with wellbeing. It's more proactive. It's about, you know, looking after your health, looking after your nutrition. That's all about EAP stuff as well. So anyway, if you can use that analogy of kind of disguising this, that sounds really manipulative, but really trying to really front load the proactive side of things, you just get better, you know, better benefit there. Other things to consider with psychological support before I move on to the next pillars. Mental health first aid training is super common. So that is effectively training champions within your team with the ability to detect people that are going through hard times, the ability to, well, we call it administer mental health first questions, and to direct people to the right process, like your EAP program. That's another thing to consider as well. So if you're an organization that you might be struggling with EAP engagement, or you're struggling to get buy-in, training the trainers, so to speak, or training people within your team in mental health first aid is one way to do that as well. The other things to look at is, you know, I touched on Are You OK Day. It obviously gets, you know, for one day of the year, it gets way too much airplay. Obviously, we should be asking those questions every day of the year, I guess. But at the same time, what is Are You OK Day about? It's about checking in on your colleagues. It's about asking, are you okay? You know, those sorts of keynote presentations or mental health experts coming in. There's so many different, you know, mental health used to be just one siloed pillar of wellbeing. It's now this broad, beautiful beast of different aspects of mental wellbeing. So if you can, engaging speakers or engaging presenters to cover off on different aspects of mental wellbeing or psychological support is super important. Okay, the next pillar is probably, it's one of my favorites, and it's because it's a strength of ours, is awareness. As I said before, there's no point in doing all this and going to that effort if no one knows about it, if no one's engaging with it. And this doesn't happen overnight either. And often, you know, a lot of stakeholders lose heart because they get psyched up for their first wellbeing initiative of the calendar year or the financial year. They go, great, my comms are out. They look at the online bookings if it's health checks, or they look at the Zoom invite and no one's registered for their event, and they go, oh my goodness, what have I done wrong? No one wants to get involved in my wellbeing program. I'm a failure, etc., etc. Awareness takes time. The key things, the pain points we see, or sorry, the solutions for the pain points we see with this are that you need multimodal communication. You can't just send out a mass email to everyone and go, great, my job here is done. Everyone's going to come along and have a great time. Email comms are obviously a really great way to get it out there, but you might have a Yammer platform or a social media platform. You might have an intranet that you can do a post on your intranet. You might, if you're really lucky, have your own digital wellbeing platform that you can get, and I'll show you an example of one in a moment. But using 2 or more modes of communication is the best way to get people aware of your program and engaging in it. In-person awareness is, dare I say it, it sounds old school at the moment, but actually bringing things to life by, it might be at the start of a stand-up meeting going, by the way, guys, before we get into the meeting today, just letting you know that next week it is Men's Health Week and we've got a great presenter coming in to talk about this. Get along to it. You'll learn lots and it's a great way. I'm coming in for it and I'm going to have a lunch afterwards. So if anyone's around, it'd be a really good one to get on. It seems really old school, but it's something that having those different points of communication is a way just to engage people, whether they're working from home or whether they're working in the office and so on. That's probably the key take homes for awareness. I touched on way back at the start there that giving your wellbeing program a name, even if it is as basic and as unoriginal, no offense if you've got that, as the Pinnacle Health program or whatever it might be, it's at least got a name and it's got something that people can refer back to. So that's a really important first step of awareness. Okay, let's bring this home. Oh, actually, sorry, just to touch on awareness, this is an example of a digital wellbeing platform. So this is another, if you've got email communications, you've got a social media platform like Yammer or Slack or something like that, having your own digital wellbeing platform is effectively like a content library. So we have our own wellbeing platform. It's basically, it can be in line with your 4 quarterly pillars. It could be monthly content that goes out, but it's just another touch point for employees to find out what you're doing in your wellbeing program. So yeah, that's one to note there. And I know that in our scorecard that we ask in the test, if you've taken the test, it asks you whether you have a digital wellbeing platform in place as well. Okay, champions. So kind of closely linked to awareness is champions, and it is really, to do things on our own, the saying, it takes a village, etc. It's very hard to be the only health and wellbeing stakeholder and engage a workplace team, particularly if that team is geographically diverse. If you've got offices in different states or in different countries, you really need champions. You need local champions, you need champions in different teams or departments, but you need, basically by champions, we're meaning anyone else at the organization that can help engage people and remind them that things are coming up. They can really be that motivator, like that person, that fictional person I said before that would stand up at the start of a meeting and say, hey, next week's Men's Health Week, get along and let's go out for a lunch or even a drink afterwards after we've got this session. So champions help engage in your program. Therefore, you get higher engagement. Therefore, you can justify the return on investment when it comes to reviewing this at the end of the financial year or the end of the year when the people that have given you that budget, they go, well, how have we gone? Why did only 5 people come along to this and so on? You go, well, actually, we've got a champions network now. Also, we've engaged the CEO or we've got the managing director of the company involved, and we're going to get a short video out of the managing director before we do each theme to say, hey guys, I've booked in for my health check. Why haven't you? Or flu vaccinations are coming up. We don't want to get sick. Let's get on board. So the champions pillar or the champion step of structuring your wellbeing program is super important. It can be anyone, but it's also super important to get some leaders or to get some sort of top level buy-in for this as well. Okay, makes sense. Easy for me to say, sometimes harder to do, but you know, I'm really leveraging the last 2 years of this wellbeing focus. And if leaders are talking a lot about wellbeing at the moment, I'm making them put their money where their mouth is, and not money so much, but put their efforts where their mouth is, and saying, well, great, that's good. Let's go from tokenistic into tangible here, and let's really sort of build this out. All right, and the final pillar, guys, is evaluation. So, all right, just to recap on those steps, you've mapped out somewhat of a structure. One thing I should note there as well is that you don't have to have all of the initiatives planned in June or in January. You just have to have some kind of structure. So you might even just have some fairly loose pillars or themes. The meat on the bones can come later. As long as your staff know what to expect over that time, at least you can buy yourself some time by not booking in your speaker for December 2022 when it's only June, but at least knowing that December's around financial wellbeing, or November, December, that quarter is around financial wellbeing. So you've mapped out structure, you've made sure you've got that psychological support in the background, you've got an awareness program, so you've got comms templates, you've got, and we provide comms templates, by the way, but you've got a marketing team member involved that can get the message out. You've got multi-modes of communication, so it's not just you emailing out everyone. You've got some champions on board, so you know that they're going to help you get people on board. Then the final step is measuring how you've done. So measuring can be as simple as an employee engagement survey. You can survey at the start of the year or financial year, as in, you know, what do you guys want to see with your wellbeing program? What did you like with your wellbeing program? How would you rate your wellbeing? How would you, or what rate of change would you say you've experienced with your wellbeing? As in, how much better or worse has your wellbeing got over the last 12 months or from what we've offered? Do you have any suggestions to changing our wellbeing? So this is all really qualitative or quantitative data you can get. The other more health-based evaluation you can do are the things I spoke about before. So they can be wellbeing checks, mental health checks, skin cancer checks. This is all gathering de-identified information of the health of your staff. And you don't get information that says Josh has high blood pressure or John, you know, doesn't eat his 5 servings of vegetables. The information that you get is this de-identified report that says, of the 100 employees that did your health checks, the areas to focus on really are sleep health and nutrition, because they didn't really rank well for that. So as the stakeholder, you can then go, great, I'm going to get a keynote presenter on sleep health, and we're going to engage in that sleep health challenge, and we're going to do some nutrition work, so on and so forth. So you guys get the drift. I know I'm kind of running out of time here, but that's the 5 steps. So the SPACE framework, hopefully I've given you guys enough kind of very basic examples of that. This is probably the point where I should just throw to you guys to ask me questions, specifics, client examples, anything like that. And yeah, I've already shared the link to the scorecard, and this is what you'll sort of see if you do complete that scorecard. You'll see how you kind of rank, how your organization ranks in those different pillars there. So that's about all I've got to say. Sorry, I know I do talk a lot, even so much so that my voice has gone a bit funny. Any questions, guys? Thanks, Josh. Got to head to the next meeting. No worries, Philippa. Good on you. Thanks, Cassie. Thanks for jumping on. Susan. Yeah, that's great, Susan. If you're, yes, you are still on. I love that. And you might find EAP providers are kind of now blurring out, I suppose, into different aspects of wellbeing. And like you've said there, I guess if you're paying for it, I suppose, for want of a better expression, there are links with health insurers. There are links to not just what we think EAP is, which is someone on the end of the line. There are links with that. And we partner with most of the EAP providers, and we often do their physical wellbeing side of things, if that makes sense. So usually if they're worth their salt, if they don't do it themselves, they'll be able to link you in with different parts of that program. So that's a really good call out there. Thanks, Susan.
I just have to say, if I may, we use Benny Star, who I hadn't come across before, but they're quite big in Australia, aren't they? And, you know, they have seem to have quite a good approach, but it's interesting to me how much the organisation didn't know, even the fact that you can actually use them right from day one, but that wasn't clearly stated. So part of my job's just been going, hey, looking under rocks and go, this is what we've already got. Did you know that? So
100%. That's a really good say, looking under rocks, and that's that audit at the start of a program, because it's the most frustrating thing, and you go, cool, I'm going to chase this new shiny object of this because I read an article about it, and now I know we need to have a resilience workshop, or that's a bad example, but then you find you've already got that as part of your package, or you've already got a pro bono relationship with Beyond Blue or something like that, and you're like, damn, we already have this. So yeah, I love that looking under rocks expression there, Susan. That's really strong.
Yeah,
and by the way, Benistar. Sorry, you go.
So one of the challenges we've got, because we're a district council, is a diverse workforce. So we have, like our policy people, who sit in the office all day, and we have our, parks guys who are out, looking after the turf and all the other things. So one of the things that seems to happen is that can be hard to reach across the organisation. I don't know, have you got any thoughts about that or insights into how other people might do that?
Yeah, so we work with lots of geographically diverse, I suppose is the best term, but for organisations that might have a really unique mix of, so we work with councils first of all, so we kind of understand you've got your head office, so I assume that you might be working from home or from
the office. I'm home today, actually. Home today.
But you've got the people out in the field as well, and it's all well and good to go, cool, well, let's just run a session in the office, but those employees that are out on the road, or they're out doing stuff in the field, it's very hard for them to do that. So that's where it comes back to that, having something for everyone, having access from anywhere, anytime. So I'll give some specific examples. So flu vaccinations, I'm not sure if you guys offer workplace flu vaccinations. It's a really common one to offer. So if you've got your office employees, well, obviously it makes sense. You can run flu vaccinations on site at head office. We're going to run it for 4 hours on Tuesday, Thursday. Big body run comes along, really easy to run. For those people that are out in the field and are working on the roads or whatever it might be, they don't have that luxury. But our vaccinators, they have the option of doing the pharmacy voucher program. I'm not sure if you've seen that, which is where
we've just gone to that this year, which was made a big difference to, but we're not sure about uptake, to be honest, but it's made a difference to administration and accessibility. But it'll be interesting to see, compared to last year, how many people actually took the option.
And it is, I guess, the asterisk on that is it's been a really strange year. Just what I'll do is I'll stop recording.
Sorry.
Just give me 2 seconds, and I'll keep stop recording.